Hello and welcome to my channel. Here I review movies and television shows. Today's topic is the new film Gladiator 2. It's a dramatic action film about a gladiator conquering the Colosseum and facing his destiny. Peter Gregg and David Scarpa wrote the story and Ridley Scott directed the film. It stars Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal, and Connie Nielsen. To start, I think I should say that I loved the original Gladiator, so I was a little hesitant about watching this. The original had a great ending that completely closed the story, and this film opens it back up to add in new details. It brings back a few characters like Lucilla and Gracchus, but mostly focuses on the new people like Lucius Macrinus and Acacius. It also does the flashback thing where they pull clips from the original of Russell Crowe as Maximus. In the end, they were respectful of the original story and did what they could to make Gladiator 2 a continuation rather than a reboot. It pays its respects and tries to build something worthwhile. It's fair to say it's not a blatant cash grab. Okay, so let's just get into it, starting with the positives. The visual journey is fantastic. It takes place in Rome and uses a lot of the remaining architecture there to recreate the ancient city. For costumes, they had the rich denizens wearing fanciful, colorful togas while the poor were draped in potato sacks. It really highlighted the situation in Rome and how desperate things had become since Marcus Aurelius's death. The journey is made with a mixture of dramatic conversations, battle sequences, and gladiator events in the Colosseum. The war sequences are quite large scale and involve big CGI armies clashing with one another. They mix in real shots of actors with the CGI to give it a more realistic look, and it ends up working quite well. The battles are high octane and filled with great stunt work. The gladiator events were done in a similar fashion. They had the Colosseum filled with real people and then CGI'd certain elements into it to make the fights more exciting. Like at one point they have the gladiators fighting a guy riding on the back of a giant rhino. The events are crazy looking and really fun to watch. As for the dramatic conversations, they're done well and center the characters properly. They capture emotional outbursts and highly dramatic sets, elevating the performance to a whole new level. The visual journey is clear and easy to follow with a lot of exciting moments in it. From a visual standpoint, the film does quite well. The cast also does their best with the material, and there's a lot of great performances because of it. Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal, and the two twin emperors played by Joseph Quinn and Fred Heschinger were all especially fantastic in their roles. Most of the screen time goes to Paul Mescal as the lead, Hanno. He's a warrior from a free city that is captured and brought to Rome to be a gladiator. His character wants revenge against the general who captures his city, and slowly he steps into the role of leader while surviving the Colosseum. Mescal tries on a Russell Crowe impression and does a passable job. He comes off as a generic action hero, but does his best to get the emotions right. He's mostly held back by the film's writing and lack of character development. Denzel Washington plays the slave owner who buys Hanno and turns him into a gladiator. Washington does a fantastic job of playing a slimeball who manipulates people with his forked tongue. He does a couple of fantastic speeches throughout the film, does some awesome subtle emotional work, and creates a compelling character. Pedro Pascal gets less screen time than the other two, but does a fantastic job with what he's given. He's a general of Rome that wants to rebel after tiring of the constant bloodshed. He gets to do a few cool action sequences and a couple of big emotional scenes, and he nails all of it. Joseph Quinn and Fred Heschinger as the two twin emperors weren't given much to do, but did a fantastic job of playing psychotic princelings. They were fun to laugh at, but also did a great job playing unhinged in a way that makes you feel like they could kill everyone at a moment's notice. In general, the film's performances are highly dramatic with a lot of stoicism on display. There's lots of pre-battle speeches, inspirational moments, and big emotional outbursts, all of which tie into the elevated drama aspect of the film. The film's soundtrack is also solid. It uses a lot of scored orchestral tracks to make the film sound like an epic journey. A few tracks from the original film also pop up here to add a bit of nostalgia to it. The music follows the story's emotional beats and attempts to draw out any of the remaining emotions. It comes in at a normal volume, does a good job matching the mood, and doesn't interfere with the dialogue at all. It's a little bit generic, but does a good enough job that you won't really care. Which brings me to the film's negatives. The writing is lackluster at its best and downright awful at its worst. The story starts off strong by setting things up and playing back a lot of nostalgia for the original film. It then follows through with that story for an hour. Along the way, there's a lot of bad dialogue, rushed sequences, and meaningless moments that get shoehorned in. Then they hit a turning point in the story, and suddenly everything changes. The main character does a 180 on his personality and motivations, the villains disappear and a new one takes their place, and a whole new story starts. It could have even worked if they hadn't rushed every part of it. The story and its characters end up feeling disjointed and boring. There's also a lot of moments that just straight up don't make sense. For instance, the leads are constantly acting out of character in order to satisfy the film's rule of cool mantra, and it creates constant plot holes. Like at one point, a manipulative, stealthy character decides to get into a flat-out brawl and never once tries to run away or cheat. It feels incredibly out of place and makes everything that happens afterward feel unearned. The story has good moments in it, and there are exciting scenes, but the overall plot is boring and feels like a first draft. Personally, I was entertained by the film. I was expecting the lack of quality in the writing, and as a popcorn flick, Gladiator 2 is alright. It has big battle sequences, explosions, great costumes and set work, and the actors are chewing the scenery up. If you like generic heroes' journeys and big action sequences, then give it a try. Otherwise, pass on it. It doesn't have much beyond the stoic drama and action. As for a rating, I'd give this film a 6 out of 10. Remember, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Bye-bye!